Talk with a Southern accent. We are y'all, and I'm Jon Rawl back in now for Toccopola Storyteller time as we get this week up and going. And if you want to get involved and maybe have your own storytelling experience that Jerry Short might need to know about, we welcome that. Our number is 803-816-1170. You can call, you can text that number at your convenience, 803-816-1170. And guess what? Phone lines have been extended now to Toccopola. So in Toccopola, they can take your calls and your feedback. All you got to do is call again, 803-816-1170. Let us go test those communication lines in Toccopola out right now. And welcome back onto the Y'all Show, our Toccopola storyteller, Jerry Short. Hello, Jerry.
Hey, John, what's happening up in your part of the world?
What is that telephone number there in Toccopola?
You know, it's kind of like they used to do in the movies and TV. You just give 3 5s, like 1555, 1212 or something. And that's about all I can give you.
Do you remember as a child not having a telephone?
Can I remember now? I had a daddy that he'd go spend $10,000 for a Larry Domino, the third pole Hereford steer from Hop Mowers. Same place Rita Haywood bought hers, and we didn't have a phone when I left home in '64.
Are you serious?
I am very serious. And my grandparents didn't have a phone, and we had to call neighbors to talk to them. And it was really, he could have had a phone, but he wasn't going to pay for a phone. He had some cattle to buy. He had 2 service stations. He had a phone in his service station. I say he did. I wasn't allowed to use it, probably. But no, I got my first telephone, and it extends on beyond graduating from high school. It extends on with me. I guess I actually got my first telephone after I was married. And that number was 1822 was the last part of it. But anyway.
No, let me give it a call real quick. 1822.
And it's a 22 with front of it. But, and somebody does have that number now, I think. But anyway, I kept it for a long, long time. I probably kept it 30 years, maybe, after I finally got a phone. Probably got it in 68. Or I know when we first got married, we lived in Memphis and we didn't have a phone in our condo. I don't know if that's
so
a condo
you moved from Toccopola to the big city of Memphis and you still didn't have a telephone?
Still didn't have one. We went for my wife to call her parents in South Louisiana. She had to go to a pay phone on the corner to make that phone call around downtown Memphis, right off of Crosstown in Madison. There was a payphone by a convenience store.
Probably, I would assume, even in the 60s, maybe not the safest place for a woman to go out and be making telephone calls.
Very safe then. Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, we didn't worry about anything in those days. And you talk about phones like that. They had phones, now everybody I dated had phones. I might be the only person that didn't have a phone. I know it's sad but true.
Well, I'm kind of jealous, Jerry, because I grew up in a world where we had telephones in every house, and as you are maybe a little younger than me, just about everybody's had a cell phone, and getting somebody's telephone number and or calling them is a big part of the whole dating thing. So you had a option back in the 60s. If a woman or girl said, "Jerry, why haven't you called me?" You had a pretty good excuse.
I didn't have a lot of those questions thrown my way, but it's probably best that I just hitchhiked to another town and saw them in person, sat on the front porch. But I tell you one interesting sideline of that phone situation. Even after we got married, phones were so expensive. You just a phone call then, it wasn't like today. You went through the operator. And you could call collect person to person and all this stuff. So when I was first married for a long time, and everybody did it wasn't just me. if we traveled somewhere and we had been visiting in-laws, and when we got home, I would call back. I had a phone then, but I would call their number, and I would ask to speak to my name, person to person. And the operator, you could hear the operator. The operator would say, I have a collect call from Mr. Jerry Short. Will you accept it? And they would say, no, he's not here right now. So, okay. And then I'd say, okay, operator, I'll try later. So later, I didn't try later, but that informed those people that I called that we made it home safe. So it saved that probably a $5 call.
Oh, was that much?
Always high. Phones were high. I mean, it was unbelievable.
But the phone call, didn't telephones actually, weren't they owned by the phone company, the actual devices?
Yeah.
You had to rent them?
Let's see. I didn't have that much experience in purchasing them or anything. But
didn't they rent them out? Wasn't that a fee part of your phone bill?
Yeah, I think so. You did pay for the phone. And but I kept that phone. And then I went to work for International Paper Company. We made that timber company I went to work for. We had a phone there, and a vehicle ran in the bottom of the building one night, and it caved it in my office, ended up on Main Street. And I've still got that phone. It was hanging on a wire when I was called to go down there, and I just left the officer. I guess I'd have been hanging down there with it. But anyway, I've still got that old black phone, and I enjoy watching old shows and old movies and TV series, and you see those kind of phones that we had. But it was real expensive. The first phones, you could call for a nickel or a dime in my day. But I think I remember the nickel phones, pay phone.
Yeah.
That you put a nickel in on the street, and if you called somebody's house, you could stand there, because I did get in a fight in a town in Louisiana one time, talking to my girlfriend at the phone. The guy he told me I needed to move on. I'd talked long enough, so it didn't turn out too good for him. Now today it would be the other way around. It wouldn't turn out too good for me. But that was a situation. You didn't want to give your spot up on a phone. So phones were really rare, and hey, they're part of America coming along, and lots of people in the country didn't have phones. And but we lived, our farm joined the city limits, and if they had, let's say, village limits. So all our neighbors had phones. Let's put it that way. So and my mother's parents had phones, but hey, my daddy and his family, no phones. We were two farming, and two cattle, and two muley, and two horseback. So big changes, huh?
Jerry, if it makes you feel any better, just so I can sort of connect with you. My mother did not have a phone when she was in high school. She didn't have a indoor plumbing, and she also, unlike you, she didn't even have a car.
Golly. Well, I didn't get a car now until I was 18 and left, and had a good job. I had money, but my daddy wouldn't let me buy a car. And every time I tried to buy a car, he said, I'm not going to be responsible for you. It was just like when I was going to college, when I was leaving to go to college. That kept me from going to college right away, because he said, I'm not going to be responsible for you. And I said, well, I went to Memphis to get a car. And the used car salesman, Homer Skelton, he drove the car all the way back to town. And my daddy said, I told you I was going to get a car. I got the money. I worked every summer. I had cows and stuff like that too. And he said, no, I'm not going to be responsible for you. I said, do you think I'm going to college without a car? No way. So we probably had an argument there.
Probably. I would probably think you did.
Yeah.
Jerry Short is who we're talking to. He's our Toccopola Storyteller, and we're trying to get through the old days of communication with him. We've progressed a little bit. We've progressed a little bit, and But Jerry, I want to ask, let's kind of modernize things a little bit, if you don't mind, before we take a break and continue our discussion. We're going to get rather intellectual with you in the next segment, but
Boy,
we have made here at y'all.com, we have made our second declared national championship in the history of the Y'all Company. Back in 2004, Y'all Magazine declared the Auburn Tigers a national champion in college football. That was I think last year or next to last year or something like that, and the way the college football stuff was done. And Auburn should have been playing in the national championship. Unfortunately, they missed out. It was Oklahoma and USC playing in the so-called title game. Auburn got left out. Auburn went on and won their bowl game and finished a very good undefeated 2004 season. But we declared them at Y'all national champions, and they deserve to be national champions under the great coach who became a senator, Tommy Tuberville.
One of my personal friends.
That's right. Jerry, we've done it again. Here we have declared this week, and you might have tuned in the first hour, we have declared the NC State Wolfpack baseball team a college baseball national champion after what happened to them in Omaha. I'm sure you kept up with what happened to the Wolfpack, but they're not going to get to play for the so-called championship in Omaha this week as they got eliminated because of the coronavirus and testing positive. This is a team that could have easily won the thing. They didn't lose the national championship. They just didn't have a chance to compete. So we're going to go ahead and declare the Wolfpack a national champion. I think it's perfectly fine to have more than one national champion this year.
Well, we've always lived with that in the past before, the last 10, 15 years. So it's nothing new. Back when I was a big Ole Miss fan, I would declare Ole Miss a national champion a lot of years because they never voted after the regular season. And then we'd go on to the bowl game. I remember one year Minnesota was number one, Ole Miss was number two. Minnesota lost in the Rose Bowl, and we beat LSU pretty bad in a rematch on Billy Cannon's run in the Sugar Bowl. But they didn't declare us national champions. Minnesota retained the national championship, and we retained number two. And that happened 3 times in my years of following Ole Miss football. They had the best team at the end of bowl season, but you didn't go that far. So, I'm with you on that. And they did get a bad deal, I think, on that COVID. And I was talking to a coaching friend of mine this afternoon about that. And he was, reminding me how unfair it was for the players. That I don't care if you got a bat boy, if you got 9 people, go ahead and play. You'll finish a game if you're down to 8 people or 7 people.
I think the rule might be 8. You can play baseball with 8 players.
It's 8. Yeah, you can do that. And so, go ahead and let them play. They let them play the game before, if I'm not mistaken. And they had 2 or 3 that had tested positive. But then think about your high schools that it affected during the year. And if you want to go that far back, Ole Miss last year, I'm not a big Ole Miss backer or anything, but I was in my youth. But let's just say last year they was leading the nation in baseball when they shut it down, collegiate baseball. And I think they were 16-0 or 16-1, and leading the nation in about 4 of those 6 polls that baseball has. But they just wiped it completely out. And Bianco got the National Coach of the Year in a couple of polls. So, what do? You got this COVID thing. Why not go ahead and play it? It's like football. Southeastern Conference, we got 14 teams, and you usually played 14 games. And they went on and cut that back to 10. So why not baseball? Why not do it in some other sport like that too? They played 10 and they went on and had a national champion in football. Am I correct?
Yes.
And so, I think North Carolina State, I'll go along with you on declaring them that.
And if you're just tuning in, I declared that they were going to win the national championship more than 3 weeks ago. And I played the audio from that because I guess I know a lot about college baseball, and I didn't even know that I knew that. But they definitely got there, and in my world and y'all.com, we're just going to go ahead and declare them not the national champion, but a national champion of college baseball.
Right. That's the way to do it. And, that's the way. That's the reason that at Oxford they say they've got 3 national championships. But Alabama claims about 17 or 20 national championships.
I think they're up to 18 now.
And and they've got some of those same names that Ole Miss uses. Dinkle or Yinkle or somebody, national champion, but they claim it. So heck yeah.
Answer the question, since we're talking about SEC. Let's talk SEC championships. I think I saw something the other day that Mississippi State had never won an SEC championship in football. That's not true. Didn't they win one in 41?
They won one in 41. Of course, they went undefeated, and I think Ole Miss may have been second that year. Unusually close deal, and that game depended on it. I believe the Ole Miss State game, and State won that game 7-0. I think. I'm kind of a semi.
And that is also a year I think Alabama claims as a national championship.
They do. They claim it. And of course, in those days, we had Tulane and we had Georgia Tech in the Southeastern Conference, and they got out because they wanted to keep their money from the bowls. Back then, you didn't have about 7 bowls max, anywhere from 5 to 7 bowls, and you had to split it in the conference. The money. That's the reason those two schools got out of the SEC. But, yeah, you're right. Mississippi State did, unofficially, officially, however you want to look at it. They were the only one that was 6-0. And the way they used to do that, because I remember it really well, Ole Miss won their last SEC championship. It was in 1963. And they kicked a field goal to tie Mississippi State, I believe 17-17. I was standing on the sideline right beside Coach Johnny Ball when he said, kick the field goal. Well, everybody thought it was crazy because Ole Miss was 5-0. But Alabama was 5-1. So the tie, 5-0-1, percentage-wise, gave Ole Miss the SEC championship, which is the last one they won. And that was by going for a tie. And they were down inside the 5-yard line, and they'd been driving the ball. But Vaught, he wanted to get that SEC championship, which gave them another trip to the Sugar Bowl. But anyway.
And their last one, I think. Well, no, they went back with Archie.
They went back with Archie and beat Arkansas the year that Arkansas had played Texas for the national championship. Nixon flew into Fayetteville and gave Arkansas. He was going to give the winner. Texas won 14-13, I believe, and he gave Texas the national championship trophy at the end of the regular season. And then Ole Miss played them in the Sugar Bowl, and Ole Miss had not a real good record that year. Ole Miss was 7-3, and they had been beaten 1 point by Alabama, who wasn't very good. I think Alabama didn't even make a bowl, but they didn't have 100 bowls like they do today, and LSU didn't get to go to a bowl that year because the Sugar Bowl was wanting them. They had won the Southeastern Conference Championship, and that was in '69.
Yeah,
I guess it would have been in January of 170. So they held out, and Notre Dame never had been to a bowl game in history. So they decided to go. LSU was wanting the Cotton Bowl because they had been to the Sugar Bowl maybe the year before or the year before that. So they was holding out. And then the Sugar Bowl got tired of waiting, and they offered it to Ole Miss. It was a 7-3 record. So Ole Miss in one of the top 4 bowls in America when they didn't have 7 bowls with a 7-3 record.
Yeah.
And LSU stayed home that year because Notre Dame went on to the Cotton Bowl.
That was the year that LSU lost to Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
They lost to Tennessee the week after they beat Ole Miss with Billy Cannon.
That's right. I think they were a 1-loss team with the only loss to Tennessee.
Yeah, they lost to Tennessee after they had beat Ole Miss.
And would have gone and had a tremendous bowl opportunity, but they got greedy and decided to go to Cotton Bowl.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like Ole Miss went to the Sugar Bowl about 5 out of 8 years. And it was getting to be, just a little bit too much. And so LSU, it seemed like they were down there when Ole Miss wasn't down there. So they wanted to go to Cotton Bowl. Now, Ole Miss went to Cotton Bowl 2 or 3 times in the 50s to the 60s. And I think Ole Miss went in 62 and went back to the Sugar Bowl in 63. And they was in the Sugar Bowl in 61. and they was in the Sugar Bowl in '60 on a rematch against LSU on the Cannon Run. So, it was things were a lot different then than they are today in intercollegiate athletics. So,
Well,
back then it was more about who you wanted and who your favorite draw would have been. Like LSU would have been a big draw, and there was only one game on TV a week of college football in the '50s and '60s, and that was really unique.
I don't remember those days. Talking to Jerry Short, and just like the old days, it's kind of a throwback here again. We declare NC State a co-champion or a champion of college baseball, and that was the way it was often done in college sports many, many decades ago. We are going to go to a quick break, come right back. Jerry Short has been brushing up on a developing story out of all places, China. And what does this have to do with the South? That will be told to you right after this break. You're enjoying Y'all Talk with a Southern Accent. And we're back on the Y'all Show with Jon Rawl. Jerry Short is our Toccopola Storyteller, kind of wrapping up this hour with our conversation with the man in T-Town, Toccopola. And Jerry, I'm impressed. Before we came on here with you today, you told me you'd been following the story about mankind in China. And Jerry, it looks like perhaps China might have beaten us once again, not only with the China virus, but also the fact that they might have had a head start with mankind before the rest of us kind of got into the game. What do you know about what's been developing there in terms of this thing they found maybe in a cave or somewhere?
It's only happened in the last couple of days, and they've had this skull that they found in the reason they call this it's not a Neanderthal anymore because it's older than the Neanderthals. That's 100,000 years ago. And this skull is supposed to be 150,000 years old. Of course, they're starting to try to, as they do in colleges this day and time, looks to me like they're trying to look at evolution maybe a lot, because they're saying that we maybe have sprung from this latest one in China.
Now, Jerry, that is Neanderthal thinking.
Well, I'm a little bit Neanderthal mentally, so I guess it fits with me. But anyway, they found this thing. It was actually discovered, I believe, in 1933 when the Japanese started moving into China.
Yeah.
And they were putting a bridge across the, I believe it was the Dragon River. And they dug up this skull. It was in perfect shape. It was, I believe, if I remember reading it in the article, the dimensions were something like 8 inches wide and 16 inches or 15 inches long, and it had a bigger cranium, and it had the above the eyes, the eye sockets were really large, where it had a place for the eyes, and it scared the people that found it. So they hid it. They actually took it. The ones that was building the bridge, I assume, would have been the Japanese. They took it and put it in a whale, where it stayed for 80 years. Well, they got it out of the whale, and they finally started to do some DNA, as we do today, and testing on it. And they've come up with this figure that it could be 150 years old.
150,000.
Years old. So that does away with what they're trying to do is change our family tree, it looks like. So our family tree, we wouldn't be right under the Neanderthal, which is a Java man and a few more Asian man, and where skulls were found 100,000 years ago, period. But we're going to be in this sister. They give it a name of not Homo sapien, which we consider, we evolved to a Homo sapien. I'm speaking like a scientist, which I'm not. But
Dr. Jerry Short here.
Yeah, but obviously, we're not a Homo sapien. We're a human being, I think, but the scientists like to call us a Homo sapien. But anyway, they're saying this could be a sister to the Neanderthal deal, which would be another 50,000 years later, though, So anyway, they found it. They've gone over it, and they've named it long G, Homo long G, instead of Homo sapien, and it's going to be in our family tree. As we revolve from that period. And I don't know where you start reviving from, because I revive from
Revolving or evolve?
either one. We're reviving and we're evolving. And so we've evolved into this, what me and you're looking at each other like right now. We've become what me and you see when we look at each other from a Java
Neanderthals?
man, from Neanderthals. So the Neanderthal was our closest relative, as they refer to it, scientists. And they went extinct over a period of time. And naturally, what do scientists want to do? They went extinct because of maybe the environment was bad or things like that.
Global warming.
Yeah, global warming. And I'm sure we may have had some. But anyway, back to this dragon man, that's a common name that they're going to call him. That's going to be our closest relative. But as I started to say a while ago, the calendar began ACBC. Let's go ACBC on the calendar. The longest date I remember is the first Olympics, I believe, were like in 700 something BC in Rome, maybe, in the Colosseum. But then if you go back to that, I have read somewhere that the calendar goes back to the second BC millennial. Like we just went through hours. We could go back to that BC wise. So, I'm thinking Homo sapien, to heck with it. I'm thinking Adam and Eve. And so what would that be? How many years? Have they come up with that skull yet? Have they DNA'd that skull? So we're going to have to live and see what scientists try to hang on us with this situation. And like you said, it's out of China. And sometimes good things don't just always come out of China.
No.
I remember when I didn't have a telephone, but we had food, plenty of food. And if I didn't eat it all, my mother would say, son, you eat the rest of that because there's kids starving in China now. So I'll never forget that. It was like, eat your food, because there's some kids in China that don't have anything to eat. So now they've got the oldest human being, like that's where it all began. But it's in that area, and they tried to hide it for a long time. And evidently, science has just now got to studying the skull. It's a perfect skull. I've looked the skull photo up, and gosh dog, it was room for, I believe they said, a 4-pound brain inside that skull, because it's a perfect skull. And I bet my brain don't weigh but 1.5 pounds. But that's neither here nor there. It's probably a lot there. But anyway, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to follow and see what they try to push on us. But
Jerry, I'm impressed with your knowledge of this subject. I am, and we've just learned a lot. I feel like I've been through a college class.
Well, now look, I read the article, and it was written by some scientists in Oxford, England, not Oxford, Mississippi, and where Rhodes Scholars go. Like, you didn't know I was a Rhodes Scholar, did you?
ROADS, yeah.
Boy, you got me on that one too. But you're right. Yeah, I was a Rhodes Scholar. But anyway, that's where they're doing a lot of research on it. And they also, in Peking, they're doing research on it. So I guess time will tell us exactly what our family tree looks like when they get through doctoring it up. I thought my family tree was a son on one arm, a daughter on the other arm, and their children hanging to them. And as we did when I was 60 years old, I got them together and I said, okay, for the family picture on my birthday here, we're going to do a family tree for the picture. And I put my son on one arm and put him on my shoulder. I put my daughter on the other one. And then they had their kids hanging on to them. And luckily, the kids were a lot smaller when I was 60. And also, luckily, another one was born later. So I had one less on the family tree. But we took that family tree picture. And I'm going to let that be my family tree, if that's okay.
Yeah, a
And,
family tree that might go all the way back to Peking. Who knows?
oh, I know. I've always wanted to go to Peking, and we may get our chance.
Yeah,
You
the old
never know.
home place,
There
Peking.
you go.
Jerry, thank you very much. Great to talk to you, and thank you for the incredible knowledge here that you brought on today's Y'all Show.
Well, I just mostly talking, but it's what I read, and let's just say I didn't invent it, but I do believe that man started with Adam and Eve, and I'm gonna go down swinging believing that.
All right.
And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you
And
very much, everybody. Jerry Short, our Toccopola storyteller. And that will wrap up that brief conversation with Jerry. We got more of the show that is all about the South, and this show is going to continue right after this. Don't forget our number is 803-816-1170.